Music, applause, when Bob Dylan abruptly ended the decades-long silence on Richard Manuel, the band's elusive and frail soul. The music industry was taken aback. Music, we pushed ourselves to the limit. You know, to the point where we were truly ecstatic with one another. His disclosure was not a typical statement. Rather, it was startling information that completely changed how others had previously perceived Manuel and their relationship. After many years, the previously unpublished details of Manuel's terrible demise were made public. This is not just the tale of a gifted artist, it is also the long-forgotten reality. The viewer is suddenly looking at a whole other image, one that is more dramatic and startling than any earlier conjecture. Richard had something that none of us had, and I couldn't defend it, Dylan acknowledged in a brief statement that was recently taken from Stephen T. Lewis's biography, Richard Manuel, His Life and Music. Fans were taken aback by this statement right away, because Dylan had not mentioned Manuel's passing in public for almost 30 years. For the first time, Dylan has expressed his own sorrow at the untimely passing of the guy who co-wrote Tears of Rage, one of his most tragic songs. Enjoy music. Dylan has always kept his professional and personal lives apart, but this time, he has gone too far. He hasn't done it lightly either. In addition to being a unique vocalist, Manuel was Dylan's complete opposite: vulnerable, sensitive, and frequently overcome with inner turmoil. Dylan was composed, quiet, and in charge. Although they didn't always communicate while working together, they had an unwritten agreement. According to Dylan, who quotes a personal tape featured in the new biography, "There were long musical silences between us." Dylan really picked Manuel as the first person he wrote to during his Woodstock retreat, despite the fact that many people had considered their relationship was shaky. Music. The Tears of Rage arrangement wasn't simply a haphazard song, it marked the beginning of a number of crucial recording sessions for the band's basement tapes, which helped them develop their own sound. Manuel collaborated with Dylan on lyrics, lead vocals, and piano playing, a remarkable considering that at the time, Dylan seldom ever gave songwriting credit. However, as a musical collaborator at Manuel's most imaginative time, Dylan mostly vanished after finding out about Manuel's passing. He did not send out public sympathies, make a statement, or attend the funeral. A close friend of Manuel's, G. According to Hudson, Dylan decided to deal with his sadness in his own way. The public now has a partial explanation for his silence, though, as his own admission appears. According to Lewis's Twin House 25 biography, a few weeks after the incident, which was kept a secret for years, Dylan wrote a brief letter to Manuel's family. Contains Dylan's words, "I kept quiet for too long. There were things I thought I would tell him, but I never did." Lewis's compilation of sources from Manuel's family and close associates verified the authenticity of this letter. Dylan has performed Manuel-related songs like I Shall Be Freed a few times since 1986, but he has never explained why he keeps them in his repertoire. In the end, he is speaking out this time to clarify topics that have never been stated rather than to gain attention. It's a unique expression from someone who has always kept his feelings to himself, not a marketing or image-building tactic. The internal struggles and pivotal moments in the band's last phase, when Manuel was progressively driven out of the group's main orbit, must be traced in order to comprehend why Dylan was so troubled. Lines of fault inside the band. Over time, irreparable changes inside the band progressively drove Richard Manuel out of his position as the band's emotional center. When Robbie Robertson took over most of the writing and production, the other members, especially Manuel, became less visible, which sparked the breakup. Despite being the one who established the band's early style, Manuel's lack of writing involvement made others feel excluded. Numerous records demonstrate that Big Pink's and the band Creative Power's sound started to lean more in Robertson's direction following the album's popularity. Manuel retreated gently instead of reacting aggressively. Manuel wrote a far smaller amount of songs during the subsequent recording sessions. Even while he continued to play instruments and contribute vocals, his impact on the group's direction had diminished. Robertson, however, persisted in claiming leadership of the group. It's clear that the group's methods of operation contributed to the widening gap in musical strength. Manuel, with G. and Rick Denko, while Robertson sought a high degree of professionalism and control over everything from the songs to the image, Hudson continued to embrace improvisation and teamwork. According to a later article by Levin Helm, the band gradually shifted to one man in leadership, with the others following suit. The performance of The Last Waltz in 1976, which was renowned for being captured on film and made into a documentary, was among the most obvious instances of this imbalance. Richard Manuel, an original member, did not have the opportunity to perform a single solo song that evening. Rather, Robertson and the visitors were the main emphasis. Many people assumed that Manuel had been demoted to a supporting role in the band he had first helped form, since his absence from the main stage was not an accident but rather the consequence of management and production choices. Another significant factor during this time was Dylan's relationship with the band. Robertson took the initiative in all of their partnerships, while Dylan remained at a distance. Manuel, who had been Dylan's co-writer in the beginning but now had limited influence over any joint endeavors, felt even more marginalized as a result. Manuel was a performer who had no say in composition or material development when Dylan returned to the band in 1974. The conflict permeated both his personal and professional lives. Manuel's work and silent contributions were hardly acknowledged, although Robertson was frequently commended by the media and critics. His disengagement, lack of drive, and uncertainty about his role in the group were all influenced by this. Even while Helm and Dano still harbored affections for Manuel, their feelings were insufficient to reverse the already unbalanced situation. The tension persisted until the band's dissolution, even though it did not turn into a public dispute. Many of the other members of the band disagreed with Robertson's decision to dissolve the group. Although Manuel did not react forcefully, others who knew him well attested to the fact that he felt totally abandoned. Manuel's personal life started to fall apart as his involvement in the group crumbled. The band's internal strife boiled over into psychological injuries, which led to a long-term collapse and an unmanageable manner of living that would be revealed in the following stage: loneliness and addiction. Late in the band's tenure, Richard Manuel started taking heroin. At first, it didn't affect his music, but over time, his health deteriorated. Manuel had turned into a strong drinker by the early 1970s. According to those who worked closely with him, he was rarely sober when he came into the studio and drank heavily for extended periods of time. Manuel's composition and performance skills significantly declined as a result of his amphetamine addiction. He frequently arrived late for recording sessions, and occasionally his health prevented him from finishing his playing or singing. Because to his unpredictable nature, producers and engineers had to make many adjustments to their timetables. However, Manuel was still supported and protected by the other band members, particularly Rick Dano and G. Hudson. However, there was a limit to how long this support could continue. Manuel's mental health suffered as a result of his long-term addiction and the pressure of being kicked out of the band. He made 2 attempts at suicide. He first set himself on fire in his own house after dousing himself with gasoline. He used an air gun to shoot himself in the head the second time. Both times Manuel lived, but it was said that his mental health deteriorated significantly afterward. During his time in California, Manuel rented a home that had formerly belonged to Goldie Hawn, an actress. He hardly spoke to anyone outside of his bandmates there and lived in relative seclusion. According to witnesses, the phone was frequently disconnected, the drapes were constantly drawn, and the house was always quiet. According to visitors, Manuel would frequently become depressed and sit at his guitar for hours on end without picking up a song. Manuel had a close relationship with Eric Clapton, who paid him multiple visits during this time. Both were battling addiction and a sense of alienation in the music business. As documented in the appendix to Manuel's 2025 biography, Clapton once remarked, "Richard is the most sensitive person I have ever met. That vulnerability is what makes him special." This statement demonstrates the depth of the relationship between the two musicians who worked together at Shangri-La. When the band got back together in 1983 and went on a few minor gigs with Rick Dano live on Helm and G. Hudson, Manuel enjoyed a brief spell of sobriety. Manuel's health improved at this time, and he resumed eating regularly, performing frequently, and occasionally writing. His recuperation, however, was brief. Manuel relapsed into excessive wrath following the untimely death of Albert Gaman, a key manager and sponsor of his career. It is said that G-Man's passing was the last straw that crushed Manuel's soul because he was the only person in the music business whom he could really trust. Manuel started drinking more. He still arrived on stage on time and completed his set, but he frequently needed his bandmates to help him stay on course. He occasionally drank so much that, after a performance, he was unable to leave his dressing room. The other band members grew more and more irritated. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to persuade him to give up. His mental and physical health declined as his personal life took a nosedive. The last stages of tragedy began to take shape. One last night in Florida was the culmination of everything, and it was irrevocable. The last few hours, the band performed 2 sets at the Cheek to Cheek Lounge, a small venue in Winter, Florida, on March 3, 1986. Following their reunion without Robbie Robertson, the band played a number of modest performances, including this one. That evening, Richard Manuel gave a passionate performance. During his performance of I Shall Be Released, a song he had made famous during his early days with Bob Dylan, he played the piano and sung as normal. He chatted with Levon Helm, Rick Dano, and a few others backstage after the show. Nobody saw anything out of the ordinary. Between 2:30 to 3:30 in the morning, Richard Manuel returned to his room at the Quality Inn and used a belt to hang himself in the bathroom. Around noon the following day, his wife Arlie found his body. According to the autopsy report, he had traces of cocaine and a high alcohol content. Even though he didn't leave a suicide note, his actions in the last moments of his life and his prior mental state indicated that this was a conscious choice. Since there were no indications of outside involvement, police determined that this was a suicide. According to Arlie Manuel's testimony, the two did not argue that evening. Manuel, on the other hand, seemed happy following the performance and even spoke with her briefly before she went to bed. It was also confirmed by others in attendance that Manuel appeared to be in a steady mood. Before departing backstage, he even laughed with the sound guys and signed autographs for a few spectators. Many people who knew him were stunned by this, because none anticipated that he would depart in this manner just a few hours later. Later, Rick Dano claimed he didn't know why this occurred. In 1987, Richard was preparing to record some new demos in the coming weeks, but Dano remarked, "I didn't get any signals. It seemed to me more like a foolish accident than a deliberate action." Other band members, however, asserted that Manuel had been acting strangely in the days preceding it, such as being more reserved than usual and staring off into space when no one was around. The band canceled all of its upcoming performances for the year after his passing. The location of the funeral was Woodstock, New York. Many close artists, including Van Morrison, Eric Clapton, G. Hudson, and Levon Helm, visited the chapel where Rick Denko performed the organ and sang I Shall Be Freed. Despite not being present, Robbie Robertson sent the family a wreath and a heartfelt handwritten letter. At the time, Bob Dylan made no public remarks and did not attend the funeral. Major music media briefly mentioned Manuel's passing, although this was short-lived. His early band career was the subject of tributes posted on a few rock websites. Dylan and his representatives did not issue an official statement following the incident, although their relationship had been a matter of discussion in music circles. For the remainder of the band, Dylan carried on with his routine while on tour in Europe. There was an unfillable gap created by Manuel's passing. After the event, Levon Helm merely commented, "It knocked everything down," while Gar Hudson hardly spoke to the media. Any hopes of the gang regaining its former prominence were likewise dashed with Manuel's death. A great musical legacy has been uncovered in later years, through records, recordings, and testimonies from intimate friends. As will be discussed in more detail in the following section, these contributions have not been overlooked, but are instead being rediscovered with increasing regard. Richard Manuel's weight. Although Richard Manuel isn't the band's most talked about member, his legacy has subtly influenced music for decades. His unique falsetto voice, which combines optimism and agony, is what distinguishes many of his songs. His vocal performances in Lonesome Susie and Whispering Pines in a Station are still regarded as poignant highlights of the group's whole discography. Before the band entered the phases of more significant alteration, Manuel helped to shape the band's original hue while it still had a naturally rustic aesthetic. His contributions didn't end with the performance. Despite being brief, Manuel's songwriting career was noteworthy. One of the best examples of his ability to blend emotion with substance is the song Tears of Rage, which he co-wrote with Bob Dylan during the Big Pink recordings. Although it wasn't a huge economic success, critics and devoted music fans thought it was fantastic. Few people have been able to recreate the unique blend of silent sadness and a spirit of defiance that Manuel's piano playing and lyrics in this song created. Richard Manuel, Biography, 2025. Manuel's actual involvement in the band is further illuminated by his life and music. The book provides a more thorough look at the creative process, the unfinished tunes, and the moment Manuel nearly left the band entirely. It is based on over 40 interviews and previously unheard recordings. Richard didn't need to prove anything, according to Eric Clapton, who collaborated with the band at Shangri-La Studios. You would sense something happening inside of you as soon as he played a few notes. Many talks with musicians who had the chance to collaborate with Manuel repeat this perspective. The existence of other unpublished recordings from the early 1980s is another noteworthy aspect that is referenced in the biography. These are demos that Manuel recorded by himself, without the other members' help. His greatest musical idol, Ray Charles, is evidently influenced by some of these songs, which have a style that is similar to gospel and blues. These recordings are presently in storage and will likely be post-processed for future release, despite not having been formally released. Richard Manuel had a spiritual impact on the band members in addition to his musical influence. Band would never have felt like a true family without Manuel, Levon Helm once said. This demonstrated his contribution to the organization. It was the unseen glue that kept the group together, not the leader or the person who made decisions. Generations of artists that have come after Manuel have also been influenced by him. He is frequently cited by singers who aspire to Americana or folk rock styles as an example of musical authenticity. If I Could Give All My Love by Counting Crow, released in 2002. One of the best examples is Richard Manuel Is Dead. Emmanuel is still regarded as a role model for musicians that value depth and heart over notoriety or financial success, despite not being as well known in popular culture as the other band members. Many people have noticed that Bob Dylan frequently plays songs related to Manuel, such as I Shall Be Released, in his recent performances. Dylan has not specifically referred to this as a tribute, but many people believe it to be one because of how often he performs these songs and how often they are repeated. Additionally, a handwritten comment that is thought to have been made by Dylan is found in a section of the document used in the 2025 biography. It reads, "He didn't just sing, he carried the weight we couldn't." Although it is brief, the line perfectly captures what Richard Manuel stood for in the group. In addition to reminding us of the lost talent, the account of Richard Manuel and Bob Dylan's eventual revelation demonstrates that there are actual people with real hurts behind the halo. Please leave a comment below if what you just heard resonates with you. How do you feel about their relationship and the events that transpired? If you think this video is good, don't forget to like it, to ensure you don't miss any more insightful tales from the world of musicians. Share it with people who share your passion for music and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate your time.